Think homeschooling is a new trend? Think again. Long before school bells and standardized tests, parents were the primary educators. And not just in academics, but in faith and values too. In this episode, we're peeling back the curtain on the history of homeschool, what led to its near extinction, and how it made a powerful comeback that you and I are now part of. I'm Jenny Province, an Emmy Award-winning broadcaster turned homeschool mom. Welcome to Homeschool Broadcast. I'm also working on my doctorate in education, and I love sharing what I'm learning with you, which I'm going to do today. If you are looking for a boost of confidence and motivation, you are in the right place. A lot of people ask me how the heck I balance a doctorate with homeschooling my kids and all the other things that are going on. And the answer is, I don't know. I have a very supportive husband, and honestly, it's because it's God's will for me, and He's commanded me, asked me, called me to do it. And so I just ask Him to increase my energy and somehow give me more time or something. And it's happening, it's working, but it still is hard to comprehend. So last term, I took a class called The History and Philosophy of Education. In the past, I probably would have thought that class sounded boring, but man, times have changed and I have changed, and it was amazing. I loved it so much, and I really enjoyed seeing how God's hand has guided education over the centuries. It's very important to Him, and honestly, my testimony of Jesus grew by studying the history of education. Now, for this course, we were, of course, required to write a research paper at the end, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only student in my cohort who is a homeschool mom. I think the rest are educators in schools. And so for my final project, I wrote a paper called The Modern Homeschooling Movement and the Return to Faith-Based Education. For centuries, education started at home. During colonial times in America, parents, especially Christian parents, taught their children to read, write, and most importantly, understand Scripture. Jonathan Edwards, the famous preacher and philosopher, homeschooled his kids in the 1700s using biblical principles. Homeschooling wasn't just accepted, it was normal. That is, until government-mandated schooling laws entered the scene in the 1800s. Thomas Jefferson was one of the earliest advocates for publicly funded education in America, and his ideas helped pave the way for the public school system. Thomas Jefferson was one of the earliest advocates for publicly funded education in America, and his ideas helped pave the way for the public school system, and then on to compulsory schooling. His proposals for education excluded girls, enslaved people, and many others from being educated. By the early 1900s, every state required children to attend public school. The role of educating kids shifted from parents to the government. As public schools became increasingly secular, prayer and Bible reading were removed, and many families felt like they had to choose between their faith and their children's education. Fast forward to the 1960s and 70s, a quiet revolution began. People like John Holt, a former school teacher, spoke out about how traditional schools were failing kids. He believed children learned best outside of rigid classrooms and turned to homeschooling. Around the same time, Raymond and Dorothy Moore were encouraging Christian families to reclaim their God-given right to educate their children. The research showed that home was the best place for early childhood learning, and they helped homeschool grow into a faith-driven movement. Now, I really enjoy a lot of John Holt's books and quotes, but it is important to note that he was either atheist or agnostic, and he believed in secular homeschooling, and he was actually kind of disappointed when Christians started to homeschool and turn it into a faith-filled movement, just so you know. He also started to advocate for children's rights, meaning like children should be independent of their parents. It was kind of radical, and it was in the last couple years of his life, and it just got a little weird at the end. But I still like some of his books and quotes. At first, homeschooling was considered illegal in many states, but then came the landmark case Wisconsin versus Yoder in 1972, affirming the rights of parents to educate their children, especially for religious reasons. In 1983, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, HSLDA, was founded to protect those rights. By the late 80s and 90s, homeschoolers were gaining ground legally and socially. Curriculum options started to explode, co-ops popped up, and famous homeschoolers like Tim Tebow and Kirk Cameron showed the world what was possible. Then in 2020, the pandemic forced millions of families to bring learning home, many for the first time. It's important to clarify that a lot of people say during COVID they homeschooled, but they didn't really. They just brought schooling home. It's not the same thing. But it did open the eyes of a new generation of parents to the beauty of home education and homeschool. Homeschooling today is more than a trend. It's a return to faith-filled, family-led education. We're not just filling in worksheets. We're raising up children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, just like Ephesians 6:4 calls us to do. And studies show homeschoolers are thriving academically, socially, and spiritually. I can't see the future, but I do know there are forces at work to take away our rights to home educate and homeschool. We'll talk about this more in the future, but I think it's something important to pray for, that our homeschool rights will be protected. Thanks for joining me today on Homeschool Broadcast. If you loved this episode, don't forget to share it with a friend and subscribe. And of course, grab your free printable 50 social skills for homeschoolers to work on. Get yours for free at homeschoolchecklist.com. I'm Jenny Province, signing off.